From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
In a historic vote, Maricopa declares the county a sanctuary for gun rights.
Plus, policing the police, the city council voting to implement a civilian review board to oversee the Phoenix Police Department. We'll explain what this historic decision means.
We really needed to modernize our equipment.
And a look at big changes coming for voters in Maricopa County.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jordan Elder.
And I'm Rob Warner. Thank you for joining us.
Today, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors voted on the hot topic of gun control in Arizona's most populous county.
Cronkite News reporter Frankie McClister was at the meeting and tells us what the board ultimately decided. Frankie?
Yeah, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors tends to stay away from issues such as gun rights. But however, today, its members move forward on a proposed resolution despite some objections from members of the public.
All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I vote a resounding no.
Thank you, Mr. Gallardo. The motion passes.
The Maricopa County Board of Supervisors voted 4-1 in favor of Arizona's most populous county becoming a preservation county when it comes to the Second Amendment. Although there isn't a set definition of the term preservation county, it refers to counties across the United States that adopt resolutions rejecting gun laws that violate the Second Amendment. For some present during today's meeting, it wasn't the outcome that they were hoping for.
Very disappointed. I think it was rushed through by the chair without adequate study, and especially about some of the unintended consequences of this and where it's coming from.
However, others agree with the measure.
I support making this happen because we need to set a clear message to the rest of the state and the country that Maricopa is not going to stand idly by and watch their Second Amendment rights taken away from them.
The declaration now affirms the Board of Supervisors' support of the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution and the provision of the state's constitution that protects the right to bear arms. One of the original provisions, which would have prohibited the board from using government money and resources to infringe on the constitutional right to keep and bear arms, was ultimately removed. The move was supported by Moms Demand Action, which is a group that fights for public safety measures protecting people from gun violence.
I wouldn't say we're happy with the decision, but what we were grateful for was that the final paragraph of the resolution, which indicated that the county would sort of unilaterally and potentially incorrectly decide to not use resources to enforce laws that they considered unconstitutional, that part was removed.
District 5's Steve Gallardo was the only dissenting vote.
There's a common sense approach to it.
And it's important to note that the passing of this bill is more symbolic than anything else simply because Republican leadership hasn't scheduled it for a required public hearing. But I should say that there is no imminent concern of restrictive gun laws coming from the federal level. But with the presidency up for grabs in November, Republicans are pushing these proposals all across the country. In Phoenix, Frankie McClister for Cronkite News.
Maricopa County Sheriff Paul Penzone says the resolution went beyond simply affirming the Second Amendment. He released a statement saying, in part, it's in conflict with current law enforcement operations and our ability to keep the community safe from persons who seek to do harm. As a career law enforcement professional and the elected sheriff, I will never allow a political resolution to supersede existing law or interfere with my responsibility and my duty to constitutionally enforce the law.
Police reform activists win a victory at Phoenix City Hall. Cronkite News reporter Christian Sita shows us their energy after a crucial vote by the Phoenix City Council last night. Christian?
The Phoenix City Council approved a civilian oversight system for police last night that has a power to investigate and establishes a community review board. Phoenix Council chambers echoed with applause as the Phoenix City Council voted 5-4 to create an Office of Accountability and Transparency and set up a community review board. Police reform activists told council members it's time for change.
You need to have the courage to stand up for what's right for our people. Our black and brown children have been terrorized at times by police officers that are not friendly.
Advocates back the plan to equip the public with the power to handle police misconduct.
We're asking that the community have investigative power. What's wrong with that?
Most of the 50 people spoke in favor of civilian oversight of police, but Ben Leuschner, who leads the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association, says that it's unnecessary.
PPSLA has concerns with both proposals in front of council today, as we believe that they have the potential to be divisive, to set civilians in opposition to sworn members of the department.
The vote was close. Not all council members supported it, including Sal DeCiccio, who voted by phone.
This is the most radical, extremist, and anti-police plan in the entire damn country.
Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego originally backed a more moderate proposal, but through her support to the plan from council member Carlos Garcia, her vote turned the tide.
One thing we heard loud and clear today was that community should be involved in the process.
Now that the plan is approved, police and community leaders are expected to work together to root out police misconduct and highlight good policing.
I want to say this. I have nothing against the police in general. There are some really good police officers that I have met, and they have been friends to our community.
Next steps for the new agency and review board need to be worked out. They need to choose members and determine a process for building the new oversight system. In the studio, Christian Sita, Cronkite News.
The U.S. Marine Corps announced its search and rescue squadron in Yuma will disband amid safety concerns. According to the Yuma Sun, the squadron of 4 twin-engine helicopters is officially being decommissioned next month as the last squadron of its kind. The Marine Corps believes it's no longer able to ensure the safety of its pilots or those who would need rescuing because maintenance has become too difficult and costly. Meanwhile, the Arizona Senate has rejected Republican Governor Doug Ducey's proposal to exempt military pensions from the state's income tax. The GOP-controlled Senate shot down the standalone proposal yesterday. 4 Republicans joined all 13 Democrats in opposing the measure, although they offered differing reasons. The defeat doesn't mean the tax cut won't make it into a final budget deal, however. That's being negotiated right now, with majority Republicans in the House and Senate, as well as the governor.
Voters in Maricopa County can expect some new upgrades and changes to the voting process, thanks to an emergency bill signed by the governor. Cronkite News reporter Marcela Baedo shares some of the improvements made.
The Maricopa County Elections Department gave us an inside look at their brand new tabulation machines and new paper ballots that they're going to be using for this upcoming election. Out with the old and in with these brand new tabulation machines just in time for the presidential preference election. These upgraded machines are just one of the changes being made to the voting process in Maricopa County.
We really needed to modernize our equipment, and this new equipment will help us tabulate the ballots faster.
Nearly twice as fast, from 3,000 ballots an hour to now 6,000 to 8,000.
You can print your ballot.
The other change is in this emergency measure, Senate Bill 1135. Recently signed by Governor Doug Ducey, it'll establish requirements for the use of these brand new machines and allow the county to use an electronic adjudication feature.
Before, we used to have to manually look over ballots that the machine couldn't read very well.
But with this new feature, the process in dealing with damaged or defective ballots speeds up.
When we did it manually, it was about 12 minutes per ballot, and then electronically now is about 1 minute.
Aside from the new tabulation machine, Maricopa County is also changing up the way that voters fill out ballots. Instead of the old arrows, they can now use ovals. Simone Rossi was one of the first voters in the county that was able to experience this new style. She filled out her early voting ballot for the presidential preference election.
I definitely think with the ovals, there's not much room for error in that sense, based on the voter themselves, rather than the arrow where you just might want to put an X in the arrow.
All of these changes expected to contribute to a faster and more accurate process, which in turn brings quicker results, which is why Senator Quesada supported the bill.
We don't get our elections until several days after Election Day, and that's frustrating. It's about us moving into a more secure and a more technologically advanced way of handling elections.
The county said that voters can expect to see these new tabulation machines in action on March 17th for the presidential preference election. In the control room, Marcel Baedo, Cronkite News.
Last night, 7 of the 8 Democratic candidates still running for president took to the debate stage in South Carolina.
The debate coming right before South Carolina's primary on Saturday.
Senator Bernie Sanders continued to face tough words from his challengers after victories in Nevada and New Hampshire.
In a new poll, 47% of Democratic voters said the debate made them feel nervous about the group of candidates. Here are just a few highlights from the debate. Take a listen.
150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars, including Vietnam, from that point on. Carnage on our street. And I want to tell you, if I'm elected and I'm coming for you and gun manufacturers, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to beat you. I'm the only one who's done it.
At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it. The way that Mayor Bloomberg
never
is alleged
said
to
that.
have said to one of his pregnant employees.
I'll tell you what the Russians want. They don't have a political party. They want chaos, and chaos is what is coming our way. I mean, look, if you think the last 4 years has been chaotic, divisive, toxic, exhausting, imagine spending the better part of 2020 with Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. Think about what that will be like for this country.
The economy is doing really great for people like Mr. Bloomberg and other billionaires. In the last 3 years, billionaires in this country saw an $850 billion increase in their wealth. But you know what? For the ordinary American, things are not so good.
The next Democratic debate is slated for March 15th right here in Phoenix.
So we want to hear from you now. Did the Democratic debate make you feel nervous about the group of candidates?
Elaine says they definitely needed more time than 1 minute to explain their views. The moderators did not have control either. Go to their webs to get a better insight of what their positions are. And Patricia said, I may be nervous, but I'm voting blue.
It's not too late to join the conversation. Just go to our Cronkite News Facebook and Twitter feeds to weigh in.
Coming up next on Cronkite News at 5, could the coronavirus reach pandemic levels?
Some experts say yes. We'll tell you what President Trump is planning to do to keep Americans safe.
And the push underway right now to preserve and showcase native languages on the big screen. Stick around.
Ready to watch the best of PBS anytime, anywhere, on nearly any device? It's easy with the free PBS Video app. Simply download the PBS Video app on your mobile or streaming device. Now you can watch the latest PBS episodes or catch up on the shows you missed. Discover new favorites from PBS and local content from your PBS station.
As the number of coronavirus cases outside of China continues to rise, the anxiety is playing out in the global markets.
President Trump spent some of his day in briefings with top aides on how the spread of the virus could impact Americans and what the nation needs to do to prepare.
The coronavirus has now spread to every continent but Antarctica. Brazil's health minister says a man with the country's first case arrived from Italy, home to the largest outbreak outside of Asia.
On Capitol Hill, the Health and Human Services Secretary told House members the U.S. is on alert. The Trump administration expects to allocate at least $2.5 billion in resources to fund the coronavirus response. Democrats and even some Republicans say that's not enough.
We have countries that are starting to have community spread, which is essentially getting us closer and closer to what you would consider the definition of a pandemic.
The president says he will be joined by representatives from the CDC at a news conference at the White House this evening.
A new report says the most common language spoken in Arizona homes after English and Spanish is Navajo. While tribal officials say that's a good sign, the language still needs to be protected and nourished. Cronkite News reporter Kara Harris has that story from our Washington bureau.
This is inside the Mother's Tongue 5th Annual Film Festival, which is a part of the Recovering Voices initiative, which is aiming to showcase Native voices.
The exposure to these indigenous films wakes these people up.
Baca, a Navajo filmmaker, says it's important for indigenous stories to be told and essential for their language to be shown accurately.
I can write a paper, I can do an exhibit, I can do a public talk, but nothing is more powerful than a film in the words of a community.
Native languages have struggled with adapting to the demands of the digital age.
We're talking, an estimated, 400, maybe 500,000 Navajo folks. And so when you have that many numbers, practicing the language is a lot easier. A lot of other indigenous communities don't have that.
To fight the decline of native languages, Navajo groups have started creating translated versions of popular songs and movies.
And we had this young man who played Nemo who just speaks really good Navajo.
The Navajo Nation collaborated with Disney for a special rendition of Finding Nemo to encourage their youth to practice the language.
I always heard my grandma say, meaning I'm always going to hear my grandkids, and I want my grandkids to understand me, and I want to understand them.
Brown is working to create a Navajo lexicon commission that would be geared towards applying forgotten words to new terms used today.
We make names for Bluetooth, for cell phones, for Wi-Fi.
Brown pointed to the death in late January of Navajo code talker Fleming Begay. To Brown, his passing shows exactly why it's important to cherish time with Navajo elders.
That I speak the Nebazat to them, and they teach me in Navajo, and I can't get that in English. I don't think I can. They don't touch my soul.
Public institutions have started offering native language classes.
The more that we understand that this language preservation isn't about preserving so much as it is actively doing it.
In Washington, Kara Harris, Cronkite News.
The Navajo language was also tops in New Mexico, while Sioux was most popular in South Dakota and Aleut is most common in Alaska.
And I'm tracking a bit of a roller coaster ride in temperatures. I'll show you how much we'll warm up before we drop things down, coming up in just minutes.
Ready to watch the best of PBS anytime, anywhere, on nearly any device? It's easy with the free PBS Video app. Simply download the PBS Video app on your mobile or streaming device. Now you can watch the latest PBS episodes or catch up on the shows you missed. Discover new favorites from PBS and local content from your PBS station.
The weather around Phoenix is just beautiful today. Let's take a look at the weather around the valley.
Thank you for joining us for the special edition of Cronkite News. Here are the top stories that we're tracking today at noon.
Some of the best players for their program.
Hey, I'm Rick Steves. I don't go anywhere without my passport. And now, thanks to PBS Passport, you can travel with me and watch all 10 seasons of Rick Steves Europe and all my travel specials. This exclusive streaming service is just for our members. Not only can you see all my shows, but you can see thousands of hours of your favorite public television shows. Become a member today and get your passport.
Arizona Snowbowl closed all of its lifts late yesterday morning after gusts of wind reached 84 miles an hour at the top of the mountain. The ski resort north of Flagstaff is back open today. The resort posting online they received 16 inches of snow from Saturday's storm. And Jordan, that same storm ended up being a soaker for the valley. How much did we get?
Rob, you're absolutely right. That storm was a soaker for us, as well as up north too. Flagstaff officially picking up just under 3 inches. Besides the snow and the wind here in the valley, let me show you this. I mean, just look at how much rain we got over the weekend. This was all in just Saturday. This was over an inch. at the airport. And that is actually most of the rainfall that we have received so far this year since January 1st at nearly 1.5 inches. Still a little bit below the normal of 1.83, but there is an opportunity that we could make up for some of that getting into next weekend. So let's show you that here, tracking our next storm system. But in the meantime, we're going to get some high pressure building in and get those temperatures to go back up too in the 80s starting on Friday. And we'll keep those around for the next couple of days over the weekend too. But by the time we get into beginning part of next week, here comes our next storm system out of the northwest, and it's going to bring in some much colder air with it. But we're still a little bit unsure exactly where the track and the timing of the storm is going to go. So depending on that will determine our rain and snow chances across the state as we get into next week. So we'll be sure to bring you some of those updates later this week here on Cronkite News. In the meantime, temperatures across the state right now, 65 here in Phoenix, 59 in Sedona, and still a little chilly there in Flagstaff at 45 degrees. And check out the dew points. Remember, this tells you how humid the air is, and we're still dealing with the effects from that cold front yesterday. We're still sitting at 11 degrees here in Phoenix and single digits up to the north. So lots of chapped lips and dry hands across the state today, and that's going to continue tomorrow too, as temperatures tomorrow morning will wake up to the teens and 20s along the rim, 34 in Payson, 38 in Sedona, and 40s out to the west, just like here in Phoenix, before high temperatures hit the 70s and 80s all across the lower deserts, 65 in Sedona, 52 in Flagstaff, and we'll go with 57 degrees tomorrow afternoon in Holbrook. Here's what it looks like hour by hour tomorrow. Have that jacket for the kiddos as they head out to the bus stop. Temperatures in the 40s. We'll get the 50s by 9 o'clock and 60s return by 11, and we'll get the 70s going for the afternoon. So a really nice afternoon for those plans after school, and spring training kicking off for a lot of these teams tomorrow at 1 o'clock, 1:05 I should say, for that first pitch, and temperatures in the low 70s across the valley and some light winds out of the northeast at about 3 miles per hour. For the next 8 days, we'll keep the 70s tomorrow before the 80s start to come back Friday and Saturday with some clouds coming back in, and then that storm system, here it comes Sunday and Monday, about a 20% chance on Sunday night, and then we'll go take that up to about a 30% on Monday during the day. But then you can also notice here comes that roller coaster ride with temperatures. We're falling back down to the 60s as we get into next week, so don't put the sweaters away just yet.
I actually like that. I'm still liking the sweater weather, Jordan. I feel like it's still a little bit winter.
Yeah, and winter is actually going to stick around too for the next couple of weeks before we get spring going here by late March.
I'm okay with the sweaters as long as there's not rain. Thanks, Jordan. Up next, Ashes to Go. We'll show you how some Arizonans are marking the beginning of the holy season of Lent.
You did a great job. Sorry, I said one other thing after.
As soon as you're done.
The weather around Phoenix is just beautiful today. Let's take a look at the weather around the valley.
Thank you for joining us for the special edition of Cronkite News. Here are the top stories that we're tracking today at noon. Some of the best players for their program.
Cronkite Noticias is the Spanish-speaking division of Cronkite News, covering topics such as economics, education, sustainability, immigration, and border relations. Cronkite Noticias strives to serve the Spanish-speaking community in Arizona. Under the guidance of prominent Spanish-speaking professionals, students at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism develop content for our broadcast partner, Univision, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Explore Cronkite Noticias at cronkitenoticias.azpbs.org.
On the next Arizona Horizon, we'll look at a proposal to appoint instead of elect state corporation commissioners. And we'll hear the story of a song written by a Phoenix woman that influenced a speech by Martin Luther King.
Today is the start of the Lenten season for Christians, a time of atonement before Easter.
Reporter Danielle Malkin joins us to talk about a modern twist on a centuries-old religious practice taking place right here in the Valley.
And Ash Wednesday marks the first day of Lent for those who practice Christianity. Many of them found themselves in church early this morning to receive those ashes. But what about those who are far from their place of worship, on their way to work, dealing with kids and work? Those looking for a blessing in what feels like just another Wednesday? Ashes to Go has found them. Doors open at the ICM Food and Clothing Bank in South Phoenix at 9 a.m. to patrons in search of a meal and those looking for work. But on this Wednesday, the delivery of a benediction.
Palm leaves of last year's Palm Sunday.
In the form of ash.
it's the earth, it's creation, it represents that, and that the more as our bodies eventually will return to that dust, it's just a reminder that that is part of our journey of life.
Ashes to Go has humble roots, dating back to Chicago in 2010. For those receiving ashes today in Phoenix,
You shall return.
It was an opportunity to renew their faith.
It's refreshing for my soul. You know, I love the Lord, you know, and daily, you know, I pray and I ask God to lead me and guide my footsteps on a daily basis as I go through life in the community.
In the rush of modern day, an early trip to church is the last thing some people are thinking about.
That you are dust, and to dust you shall return. You're welcome.
But when Deacon Ritson offers the ashes,
with God's love and blessing, remember that you are dust.
She believes in the ability to bring that sacred moment.
In Jesus' holy name.
Thank you much.
You're welcome.
To the people.
We are offering a blessing, and we are offering God's love.
And members of the Trinity Episcopal Church had Ashes to Go located throughout downtown Phoenix today for those on their morning commute or lunch break. And Deacon Ritson shared with me that some of the most interesting deliverance of ashes she does on this day are those, like you saw in that package, through the driver's side window. You know, guys, a little reminder to slow down when life gets busy.
And it's also a good weekend to get outside too, enjoy some of those warmer temperatures, spring training too, before we got our next storm coming next week.
So that's it for Cronkite News. Thanks for joining us tonight.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Have a great night.